Hello ladies and gentlemen, Top Hat Gaming Man here. If you watched my video a couple of days ago, you would have noticed I made some content about my top 5 favourite games consoles of all time. You may have noticed on that list I placed Super Nintendo as perhaps my favourite games console ever. And funnily enough, as soon as I had finished recording that video, I went on Twitter and Nintendo released a Super Nintendo Mini. Like, how crazy is that? I just finished bigging up the console and then the Mini appears online. Illuminati confirmed, eh? Anyway, I of course ordered one of those, being a little bit of a fanboy. Purchase, I must say. However, I thought I'd better get one now, otherwise all those scalping Jimmy Savile bastards are going to prevent me from ever getting one at a fair price. So essentially I had to buy one on the spot. Anyway, today's video is comparing the library of the Super Nintendo Mini to that of the Super Famicom Mini. We are going to talk about each and every single one of those games in the libraries and decide which one offers the better selection. And of course, analysing each game too. So I'll give you my thoughts on each game in each library. Obviously some of those overlap, so there's only a few differences between the two. But here we go. I have even made a list to prepare with the names of all the games on, because there's no way I'm going to remember all of them, is there? And speaking of this list as well, if people continue to annoy me in the comment section, I'm going to make a list of all the idiots there and I'm going to write them all down so I remember who all of you are, and that way I will know not to reply to your comments. Yeah! Anyway, let's start my list. I apologise for any noise you hear outside the window. You'll hear mopeds every now and again, but today I have decided to do it all in one take. So everything you hear today is going to be completely organic, no cuts or anything like that. Okay? Right, let's start at the top of my list. Obviously you've got Star Fox and Star Fox 2 on both versions of the Mini. Something I find a little bit odd about these games is obviously in Europe it was called Star Wing at the time, the first Star Fox game, due to some sort of licensing issue. But that's pretty weird. Like, why is it suddenly called Star Fox? Like, if you're going for the whole nostalgia factor, surely it should be called Star Wing. Don't call it the American version. Like, if you've gone to the effort of making a European model of the Super Nintendo, yes, a Mini of the European version, why not go to the effort of giving the games the right names? Maybe have a think about that one, Nintendo. So yes, Star Wing, Star Fox to you Americans. It's a rather fun on-rails early 3D shooter, quite good. But yes, obviously the big story out of all of this is the release of Star Fox 2. Wow. Like, it's literally the first game from like the past which Nintendo didn't release, which they've released 22 years later. Like, that's bloody amazing, isn't it? Like, how fantastic. Like, how funny is that? They've released Star Fox 2 in the West before Mother 3. So yes, that further emphasises my point on how little that Nintendo want to release that game to the West at the moment. Maybe they're trying to drive up false demand, who knows? But in my opinion, it's just not marketable. So that's why it still never came out in the West. Speaking of that though, you will notice that Earthbound has actually been included on the North American and European and Australian versions, but it's not on the Japanese version. So maybe that does confirm that Nintendo may be listening to their Western fans a little bit, because as I said, no one used to give a crap about Earthbound really, hence why they haven't bothered releasing it in Japan, because no one's kicking up a stink there. Yet you've got those few like really moany fans, we want Earthbound, we want Mother 3, we want it on everything, it's the best game ever. And yes, I don't think they have that in Japan, hence why it's been left off the Japanese one and it's on the global release. Maybe it's on the global release simply to shut people up, because they realise if we don't put Earthbound on this thing, there's going to be a small demographic of fans who ruin it for everyone, who would just shout and moan, shout and moan, shout and moan, where's my Earthbound? Whee! That's what we would have got, wouldn't we, if Nintendo chose to leave out Earthbound, because people are that hung up about the stupid thing. It's a good game, there's no question about that, but is it in the top 21 SNES games ever? Probably not. And that's another thing as well, why did they feel the need to put so many JRPGs on the system? Like, you've only got 21 games on there and 4 of them are role-playing games. 5 if you include Link to the Past as well. So yes, Link to the Past, obviously bloody fantastic, probably my favourite Zelda game of all time, and it's great to see that game on both the versions of the Mini. Just moving on from that, I think you've got Secret of Mana on both of them as well, which again, I think that's a fantastic action role-playing game, one of my all-time favourites. The music is absolutely fantastic. However, if I remember, there is a little bit of problems with some of the battles, like in the end you just end up spamming magic everywhere. But it's a fun game nonetheless, even though it is a tad dated now. Moving on from there, we have Super Mario RPG. That game never saw a European release back in the day, so it's nice to see it on the SNES Mini, because the only other chances we've had to play it legally is via the Wii U and new 3DS Virtual Console. So it's nice to see that game get another run. Next game on there, in the RPGs, we have Final Fantasy III. Final Fantasy VI in Japan. Again, I find this very, very odd to call it Final Fantasy III on the European version. Final Fantasy, again, never saw any releases in Europe except for that odd Mystic Quest game. So yes, none of the original Final Fantasy saw releases on the Super Nintendo. The first time Final Fantasy VI saw releases in the West was on the Sony PlayStation after Final Fantasy VII was already out, and later on the Game Boy Advance, once again as Final Fantasy VI. So I find it a very, very, very odd decision to name it Final Fantasy III in Europe on the NES Mini, when every other time we've got the game previously it's been called Final Fantasy VI. So I can't really understand the logic there, like why is it not called Final Fantasy VI when everyone knows it's Final Fantasy VI? And in fact it's a little bit confusing calling it Final Fantasy III just because that's what it was called in the United States. Again, very odd decision. We've got Super Metroid there, nothing really to complain about. Most people love Metroid. It's not my favourite, if I'm honest, just because I can't get the hang of that darn wall jumping mechanic. Never got on very well with that, but a welcome addition nonetheless. What else have we got here? Donkey Kong Country. I see some people moaning that they would have preferred to see Donkey Kong Country 2, but again, for the same reason, I prefer Donkey Kong Country, because in Donkey Kong Country 2 they've got that damn bloody snake you have to play as, and again, the jump mechanic on that thing is really messed up and doesn't work properly, so I'm more happy to see the first Donkey Kong Country game than I am 2 or 3. Next one, Mega Man X, again, absolutely fantastic addition. One of my all-time favourite childhood games, and I was probably one of the only bloody people in my country to have owned Mega Man X on the Super Nintendo. It didn't feel like any other kids really had Super Nintendos, let alone owning the Mega Man X series. So yes, that was kind of like my little private enjoyment as a child. I'd never got to discuss it with anyone else because I was the only one who used to play it, but yes, that was good fun. The good old day. Next one, 2 Kirby games, which I find rather obtuse. Like, why would you put 2 Kirby games and not Donkey Kong? Like, everyone likes Donkey Kong more than Kirby. Odd decisions. You got Kirby Superstar, and then Kirby's Dream Course, which that weird golf game. Like, why is that on there? Like, you've got a huge library of like over 100 good Super Nintendo games easy, and they decided to put Kirby's Dream Course on there. I do find that one a rather odd decision, but again, only on the Western release of the Super Nintendo. Japan have had been smart enough to leave that one off. Okay, what have we got next? Yoshi's Island. Again, an absolutely fantastic addition. To be honest, there isn't that much to fault, is there, about this list of games they've given us? Like, it is a really, really strong list. Like, I could have come up with this myself. That's how good it is. So yes, Yoshi's Island, fantastic, fantastic side-scrolling platformer. One of 1995's finest. If I believe that's what I actually got for my brother's birthday that year. Yes, I was one of those kids like Eric Cartman who used to get presents on their siblings' birthdays as well. A great stat anyway. What have I got on here next? Contra 3, again, that's one of the odder entries on the list in my opinion, because again, at home in Europe, can't recall anyone ever enjoying Contra. Never ever. Well, obviously it was Pro Protector, wasn't it? So it wasn't even Contra or ours, but again, can't really remember any hype around it. I think Contra caught up a lot of speed on the NES, like the Contra brand, and obviously the NES never really caught on in my country, so the Contra brand has never been something particularly celebrated. So yes, maybe they love Contra, I think they do love Contra in North America, so it kind of makes sense why it's on there. Can't really comment for Japan, maybe they love Contra as well, but I'm certainly not a Contra lover, don't really give a crap about it. Although I remember, wasn't there Grisel, which was the same game on the Amstrad CPC? Anyway, it wasn't anything we particularly cared about at home. Secret of Mana. Super Ghouls and Goats. Everybody loves the torture of those ridiculous games. They're so bloody hard, aren't they? But fun, and good fun. So can't really complain on the list. Anyway, so that was all the Super Nintendo games I've now talked through. For me, there wasn't a lot of complaining, was there? Actually, there's a couple I've left off. Wait, sorry, I'll step back. Castlevania 4, I haven't talked about that one yet. The reason why I've left it till now to talk about Castlevania 4, because although I do believe it is a really good game, I don't think it's the best 16-bit Castlevania game by any stretch. Personally, I prefer the one on the Mega Drive. New Generations in my region, Bloodlines in the United States. I think that's all round a much more, a much more faithful rendition of a Castlevania game where you can only hit in one direction and all of that. Like, what's that all about? Why can you whip in all directions? Why? That completely that's like, it's supposed to be a horror game. So if you're in a horror game, you're supposed to be isolated and be limited in your movement. So why can you just whip and kill everything so easily? That kind of defies the point of a game being in the horror genre. So for that reason, I think Castlevania 4's probably the worst Castlevania. I put Simon's Quest above it any day of the week. And this is one of the things in the list, which makes me very jealous of the Japanese version. Because on the Super Famicom, they got Ganbei Goemon instead, which is a much better Konami game. Like, the Ganbei Goemon series is just bloody amazing, and that is, I grew up with the European version of that, Legend of Mystical Ninja, in my personal Super Nintendo collection. So that's one of my favourite Super Nintendo games of all time. But instead, they put Castlevania 4 on my version instead, probably because of the angry video game nerd made everyone believe it's one of the best games ever, even though it's just an average side-scroller, really. But Ganbei Goemon, fan bloody tastic. Again, no, Ganbei Goemon 2 is probably better. So in Japan, it makes me wonder, why did they not put Ganbei Goemon 2 on instead? That's probably better than Legend of Mystical Ninja, and it's one of the games I am jealous about never getting a Western release. Like, look, Ganbei Goemon 2, 3 and 4, all fantastic games, but they've never been translated to English. Like, if you want to moan at companies to translate games, try and get Konami to translate them. They're so good. Or even, can some fans translate them, please? If you've got time to do these big, long JRPGs, like Mother 3, for example, surely you can do easier games like those. Like, I'd much rather see those get translated. Ganbei Goemon, so bloody good. What else have we got on here? Again, another one I'm a little bit jealous of. In Japan, they got Fire Emblem on their SNES Mini instead of Earthbound. And as we all probably know, the Fire Emblem series is a lot more popular than Earthbound. There's been so many entries in that series because they all sell so well. So yes, Japan have had so many Fire Emblem titles, like a countless amount compared to what we've had in the West. Like, Fire Emblem didn't even pop up in our regions until you got some Fire Emblem characters in Super Smash Bros. Melee. And when they put them in Super Smash Bros. Melee, for some reason after that they just started releasing every Fire Emblem game at home. So yes, because of Smash, we got all the Fire Emblem games, but Mother never saw the same fate. But as you can see, in Japan, they clearly care more about Fire Emblem than they do about Earthbound, hence including it. But something that does irritate me a little bit about Fire Emblem is that it seems to have kind of replaced the Advance Wars series, which personally I always thought that was a much better tactical role-playing series overall than Fire Emblem. Fire Emblem is just a bit anime, isn't it? It's like, anime, do you know what I mean? So yes, what else we got here? Street Fighters. We got Super Street Fighter 2. We're getting Street Fighter 2 Turbo in the West, and they're getting Super Street Fighter 2 in Japan. Personally, again, I've always preferred Super Street Fighter 2, simply because I prefer the characters. You've got another 4 bloody characters, and seeing new characters added to Street Fighter as a child, it was just bloody cool, wasn't it? But apparently Street Fighter 2 Turbo, it does run faster, and it is a little bit more fun for competitive play. But being a non-competitive gamer, I can't really comment on that. So maybe someone in the comment section can tell me why Street Fighter 2 Turbo is a better game than Super Street Fighter 2, because that's what the competitive scene lead me to believe. The last two, a few more. So Fire Emblem Earthbound, Ganbei Goemon Castlevania, Street Fighter, and Japan never got Kirby's Dream Course, so good for them. But they got Panel de Pon instead, which I believe is a Tetris attack-style game. I haven't properly done my research, so I cannot confirm that. But Tetris over Kirby's Dream Course, that's good, isn't it? I prefer Tetris. And finally, they got Super Soccer instead of Super Punch-Out. See, I understand why they wouldn't have got Super Soccer in the United States, because they're weird, aren't they? They look at it as a girl sport. They're one of the only countries in the world that do look at it as a girl sport instead of a man sport, but instead they play that weird American football game, don't they? That hand egg thing that they call something where you throw a hand egg around football, which is really, really strange. A lot of nonsense goes on in the new world, doesn't it? A lot of nonsense that us old world people don't understand. Someone else explained to me how you can call a sport football when there's already a good sport called football, what they play all over the world. Like, why are they so isolationist sometimes? Maybe it is because the continent's isolated, I suppose. I've been there enough times though, so it doesn't seem very isolated to me. Who knows? So yes, we got Super Punch-Out because the United States love boxing, and to be fair, the British love boxing as well. We've produced a lot of bloody heavyweight champions for such a small island. I believe we've got a heavyweight champion now, if I'm not mistaken, actually. Beat one of the Klitschkos, yes. So yes, that gigantic country, Russia, a little Brit punched Klitschko's face in, which was nice, I must say. But just maybe the Japanese have too much honour to care about blood sport like boxing. They're more into like kung fu and karate, and all stuff like that instead. Stuff what's a little bit more Chinese takeaway than boxing, yes. So yes, I understand Super Punch-Out, yes, a good addition for Europe and Australia and North and South America, yes, good. Yeah, can't say I disagree with that. There's too many soccer games anyway, so we wouldn't have missed much by the addition of Super Soccer. So overall, I actually feel the Western version probably is better than the Japanese version. The only two games I can say I'm particularly jealous of is Fire Emblem and Ganbei Goemon 2, which I would trade in for Earthbound and Castlevania. Sorry, Ganbei Goemon, not Ganbei Goemon 2. Anyway, so yes, I think Kirby's Dream Course, Street Fighter 2 Turbo and Super Punch-Out is a better selection than Pano de Pon, Super Street Fighter 2 and Super Soccer. But yes, I am jealous of their Fire Emblem and Ganbei Goemon. So yes, overall, I think we've done okay with the selection of games Nintendo have presented us with. So not much to moan about there, except for, obviously, we got Earthbound on there. Like, did we really need Earthbound on? Like, please everyone shut up about Earthbound. Earthbound. I like Earthbound, it's a good game. I just wish I didn't have to hear about it so much, even though I'm contributing to this problem by constantly talking about it all the time. Anyway, please like, comment and subscribe, and let me think what you thought of the list of games on these consoles and what you thought of my opinions on them. Also, don't forget to dislike and leave a hate comment if you don't like me and you're one of my detractors. Anyway, cheerio!